Jane.
Well, hello. Aren't you going to start us off with Dan's Papers Roundtable coming to you from Sag Harbor?
Well, we're making waves.
We are making
waves. Making waves. Yes, we're making waves today with our fabulous guests. I'm Victoria Schneps, publisher of Dan's Papers, and we are delighted to be able to have today some very special people. Jane, you want to tell us who's joining us?
Well, first of all, we're in Sag Harbor, and we're at the iconic American Hotel, which just celebrated its 50th anniversary. So it's turned from what it was back then, which was, I think, completely abandoned, to this place that lots of people come to and have been for oh so very long. And we're delighted to have with us, starting over here, Julie Keyes, who has her art gallery, which is right next door, and so she, of course, knows a lot about art in the Hamptons, which she calls a mecca for artists. And it's such a mecca that we actually have one of the artists with us. Sabina Streeter is here. Welcome, trained in Munich, Germany, and now calls Sag Harbor her home and has for a long time. And then we have Frederico Azevedo. Did I say that correctly? Close enough. Close enough. Who is the landscaper?
Genie.
Yes,
who makes magic and art with his work, with the ground, and with the flowers, and with the masterfulness of his work.
It's magical, really, what he does with landscapes, and of course, he's been extraordinarily busy over the last couple of years. And so the theme here is, let's talk about the beauty and the art that we have here in the Sag Harbor area and in all of the Hamptons. So,
and the East End, because we don't forget about you folks in the North Fork. You're part of our world.
We were just there last week, week before, something like that.
We taped in the North Fork at the Shoals in South Hold.
So do you think about art when you're doing the landscape? Because the work I've seen of yours with the combination of the colors and the sizes and when they're blooming and how you take a place from looking just to gorgeous beauty from the outside.
Well, my work is very influenced by animation films more than anything. I believe the united of colors. I think everything works in the society and in the environment when the colors are well balanced. If the colors are not well balanced, no society can work well and be balanced, and the same thing in the environment. If you balance all the colors, then you create a habitat for the pollinators, for the birds, and then everything becomes sustainable too. So the importance of the balance of the colors is important in each aspect of life, and we forget that. And I make my work be remembered all the time. That's why everybody asks me about oh, I love your work, it's so much color. Yes, and they are very balanced, and I will never do monochromatic gardens because I don't believe on them. When I came here in the 1990s, was all about white, was Philip Stark doing everything white. Martha Stewart was saying for everybody, do white gardens. And I arrived in 1990. And I came from, I studied in Oxford, in England, and Brazil. So it was all about color. In England, you have like here, wallpapers, color walls. The color goes through everything in your life. And in Brazil, it's the same thing. You were very moved by color.
Right.
So I said, I cannot do that. And I was very lucky to have clients that believe in that, believe in color. He believed in the balance. He believed that color is important, that all colors are not just in the kitchen, but they flow in the dining room. They are everywhere. So, and that is the same thing in gardens. To have a balance in nature, you have to have color.
What about in art? When you have a choice of your tubes, I assume you work in oils or pastels. What is your medium?
I work in oils and in pastels, but also a lot monochromatic in charcoals. So it depends, but I have a colorful palette, but in one color range. And if
What's your color range?
I like strong, when I do portraiture, I like strong abstract backgrounds in red or orange, but I started to do plein air painting through an artist residency in Ireland, and I continued it here. And there you really get into those misty grays and the famous wet lights. And at first sight, you say, oh God, it's all grays and blues and cobalts, but then there's so many graduations in it which are tricky. So the palette is grays, blues. And
So what
very
inspires
smooth.
you? You have your inspiration with when you see a property. What inspires you to create something?
I had so many different shows, also starting in Munich, which initially were inspired by movie theater, 50s, 60s film, French, Italian, German. So there was a whole series of Fotoromans. And then out here in the 2000s, I started to do a series of portraiture of historical figures in Sag Harbor.
Oh.
So it started at the Whaling Museum, Captain's Maids and Widows, then it was Sister Sailors, Sons of Sag Harbor, then I did portraits of the 19th century inhabitants in Eastville, that was here in 2020, during the pandemic, so it was a little bit difficult here at the Eastville Museum. So I've been bouncing back and forth, but I will have another movie-inspired show. I will bring that here that I just had in Munich in November.
We
Well,
have
we
something to look
can't
forward
wait to see it.
Yes,
Yes.
it will be.
So what we've been talking about color, and obviously in an art gallery, one of the things that people always say when they're buying a piece of art is, I want this certain color.
They say a pop of color.
Yes.
Shoot me, right? But I will
hate
tell
that.
you, yeah.
That line is
But you know,
terrible.
art is like music. You know how when you first hear a style of music or a song, you go, oh, not for me. And then 10 minutes later, it's in your aura, it's in your DNA. You see it as a classic. I hated Fleetwood Mac. Now I know every song they've ever written, right? And it's like Liechtenstein broke all boundaries. Southampton, Warhol, Montauk, he broke all boundaries. Now it seems like what it is. It doesn't seem like a boundary breaker. So you get used to things, but someone is always in front of that pack. You know what I mean? So
Right.
you
Well,
have
but
to
I think you mentioned earlier that so many of the greatest artists of our time worked in the Hamptons.
Exactly. And so pop art originated here. Larry Rivers, who lived in Southampton, decided he hated abstract art, and he decided that he was going to do what he called it was popular culture art. So he went over to Warhol's in Montauk, and he said, and he did a picture of a cigar box, and he said, I'm going to call this popular culture art. And he said, and Warhol said, no, we are gonna call it pop art.
So he ran right into that.
Right here, again. But more than that, people go through as they change with their patterns, with stark, with hue, with color, etc. It's a trend. And they change as it goes. And so people come in and they say, what do you have in black and white? And I go, uh-oh.
Yeah. But wait, I just want to go back to one thing. I think it was in the 50s when suddenly that pop art became, it went from...
Oh, no.
Okay.
In the middle 50s, for 400 years, the art world was considered in Paris. Paris is where the art world was. That's where art and fashion and culture was all going, right? And de Kooning and Pollock moved out here because of the light. They moved to Springs. And because of the light, and they started doing what they were calling action painting, which was to actually get a moment and the emotional aspect of the person. And they were taking everything from the present. And the art critics, the Rosenberg and Clement Greenberg, changed the name of their painting style to abstract art. And then the world moved.
Wow.
The art world moved to New York in the early 50s because of what was generating in the Hamptons.
That's fascinating.
So in the meantime, there were rich people here, there were Bonneckers, there was all that was going on, but there was a heartbeat that was exclusive to the art world that began then. And it exists today as people move.
I need you to share that piece of art collecting, because the artists came here.
Right.
Now the buyers are here. How would you advise someone to get involved in collecting art?
I think that someone needs to really come to terms with what they want. Do they want to decorate their homes? Do they want to decorate their homes with resellable, with beautiful things that also have a presence and a possible,
Value?
Valuable.
Price?
Yeah.
Price
do
point,
they
Julie?
want a combination of that? Like people want. We also do hotels. We just finished the Breakers, and you know when you go into someone's house, in their lobby, in their foyer, in their living room, in their master bedroom, they want something very wow, right?
Right.
Then in the hallway, in their spare bedroom, they're not going to do the same thing. So there's a degree, you need to create a package that has beauty, some collectability, but you don't want somebody to spend over, I'm cheap, at 10 grand, if it's not going to be something very special, you need to.
But how do you know?
That's
How do you
right.
know?
You do know. You know because you can look at auction results. You look at where they went to school. You look
it's
at
very
what
easy now. It has artsy.
Yes.
You can go first date.
you can see
You
what
can online already get the prices, how they're
the
going.
museums, the way they, Sag Harbor is a very unique place because right now the art world is about women and minorities, which is really exciting because Sag Harbor is one of the first places that African Americans were allowed to purchase property, correct? And so
She's talking to the mayor, who's
Who's over
going
here.
Who's going to be on our next show, and she's got to stay focused here.
I'm back. But so the African American community of Sag Harbor is in many aspects the Duke Ellington's family. They are oftentimes the more elite part of the community than the white people walking around. So I always say I've been showing African American artists because much of my collectors are Afrocentric
Interesting.
because of the community we're in, which
Yeah.
is so
That's
unique.
so interesting, though, to think about the combination of everything we're talking about here and how it's grown up in this community and in the communities of the East End of Long Island,
right?
and the inspiration that it's brought. I mean, look at this. It's just it's its own little piece of magic.
I
Wouldn't you
didn't
say?
even know about the light, like historically, the light of the Hamptons.
Oh yeah.
But was one thing that influenced all my career. Like since I arrived the first day here, I just
Exactly.
noticed the light, and I started to work with it because it was very impressive. Because
Well, the
we have
first-
the farm fields, we have the shore,
Flower
then
fields.
we have the woods.
You don't have to
so
go to
we
France.
have all these mixtures
the
of
cliffs in
environments and
Montauk,
all
yeah.
this mixture of light.
It's amazing.
And the architecture.
Yeah.
Last but not
Yeah.
least, we have
And
phenomenal
and I
architecture
think, like,
in Sag Harbor.
even though we go through trends, but like there is always this style, and when things are well done, you keep it. It's not just a trend, but it's the style will
Sure.
remain
Exactly.
always.
Yes.
Sag Harbor during
So when
1961.
what's important is to create this style.
Right? In 1961, Sag Harbor was kind of a down market hotel, and in the American Hotel, and Sag Harbor was just a fishing village. And when Novikov did Lolita, he and Bert Stern came out here because it was a great place to shoot this. And they came with Sue Lyon to take pictures of her here at the American Hotel. So this is where Bert Stern began his career. His next photo shoot was The Last Sitting of Marilyn. And he was photographing her in this place through this window. You can see Scavonis on the opposite side in these pictures. of her.
So interesting. I
know,
mean, to the
fascinating.
history of art and culture and everything that you've been talking about. It's just really, it's wonderful.
And I designed Bird Stern landscaping here on Main Street.
Oh, you
Oh,
did?
see?
That must have been, well, when you're working with somebody that's got this
In
iconic
the early 90s
eye.
when
Right,
we
he
just bought
moved
the
here.
house. Yeah.
He moved here because he always was so in love because of
He had
the light.
all his archives in his basement.
I know.
Does it make you nervous, though, to work with somebody like that you know already has such an eye, and they're so
Well, he chose me. I didn't choose him.
right? But didn't you kind of go, "Ooh, how am I going to make
Not
this?"
at all.
No,
Like I said, he chose me. So I knew what I was doing.
right
I
answer.
always know what I'm doing.
But in history, Sag Harbor and the East End has been such a mecca for artists, art purveyors, writers, and people, the gardens that are out here too also. And it is also in real time occurring. Like there's things going on here and artists and trends that are happening here, including what Sabina's doing with her historic pieces that just keeps going on. So in real time, we are making trends here in the East End.
You hear that? That's Sag Harbor, everyone. We are really delighted to have with us these powerful people who adore Sag Harbor, cherish Sag Harbor, and know the history of Sag Harbor. We are so delighted.
We have learned things today, have we
How?
not?
Oh, yes. I'm so happy that you came to be with us.
So thank you very much, Julie, Sabina, Frederico. It was terrific.
Thank
Keep up
you.
the great work.
Until next time, this is Vicki Schneps.
And Jane Hanson saying thank
Making
you.
waves.
Making waves.
See you next time.
Thank you, Vicky.
Bye.